Hello everyone, wishing you and your family a wonderful day. In the middle of a calm morning, just when everything seems to be going smoothly, Toan suddenly receives a work call and is forced to leave Tu Diem alone in the crowded market, where she must handle everything on her own. One quick decision, one brief separation, but it begins to shape a series of changes for both of them. Now let's explore the story of Toan and Tu Diem, where small choices can define an entire future. Will trust and quiet understanding be enough to carry them through the pressures ahead? If you enjoy this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. Morning light filters through the leaves and slowly settles on the porch. The air is still cool, carrying a bit of leftover moisture from the night. Toan stands at the edge of the porch, his back straight, his voice low and steady. He calls Tu Diem to bring water. He does not rush, does not raise his voice, just enough for her to hear inside. After a moment she steps out. Her hands are still covered in soap from the wash basin. She has not dried them yet, but she already holds out a cup of water to him. She offers it first, like a habit. A small smile appears, natural and unforced. Toan takes the cup and drinks a small sip. They do not say anything else. They sit down on a wooden bench against the wall. The space is quiet. In the distance, there are birds. Closer, there is the steady drip of water from a faucet not fully closed. These small sounds make the morning clearer. Toan places the cup down, looks toward the wash area, and reminds Tu Diem to finish the laundry first. He does not speak much, only what is necessary. Then he adds something casually. He says it has been a long time since they went to the market together. His tone does not change, but his intention is clear. He wants to take her there today. Not because they need anything, just to walk, to change the atmosphere, to relax. Tu Diem listens and nods. She does not ask more. She turns back to continue her unfinished work. Toan stands up and walks to the clothesline. He takes each piece of clothing, checks it, removes small bits of tape still stuck on the fabric. These are small tasks he did not do before. Now he does them steadily, without discomfort. He organizes everything neatly. Tu Diem finishes the last batch of laundry and brings it out. They stand side by side and begin hanging clothes. No one speaks for the first few minutes. Only the sound of fabric being placed on the line and wooden clips snapping into place. The rhythm is slow but steady. Then Toan starts talking. He talks about change. Before, laundry was done by machine. Now it is done by hand. Before he wore white shirts and black trousers every day in an office. Now he wears jeans and simple clothes, working directly with his hands. He speaks slowly. Each sentence is short and clear. His eyes look into the distance, not at any fixed point. He says he is preparing for a small family. He wants to take care of Tu Diem and their future children by himself. He does not want outsiders involved in their life. He wants things simple but stable. Tu Diem pauses for a second, then continues hanging clothes. But her gaze has changed. She looks at him longer. She realizes this change is not temporary. Before, he was focused on large plans and work. Now he focuses on small tasks, but he does them firmly. A man used to a professional environment now finds comfort in manual work. The shift is clear. A light breeze passes by. The smell of soap from the clothes mixes with the damp scent of the soil. No one says it, but the feeling creates a sense of calm. The past no longer holds as much weight. A simpler and more practical direction is forming. Toan continues hanging clothes. His hands move steadily without mistakes. Each shirt, each pair of pants is placed in the right position. Tu Diem follows the same rhythm. They do not need to look at each other to understand what the other is doing. The space around them feels smaller. The land has not changed, but it feels closer. Their hands get used to the work, and their thoughts become lighter. The sun rises higher. The light becomes stronger, falling directly onto the vegetable rows. Green leaves reflect the light. Small flowers begin to show color. They finish hanging the last pieces of clothing. White fabric moves gently in the wind. Tu Diem looks at Toan and smiles. She says he looks neat and strong in jeans, not like before when he always wore office clothes. Toan smiles. He says jeans feel much more comfortable, not restrictive like the black trousers and white shirts he used to wear. He looks at her and says she looks good in jeans too. He promises to buy her more so she can change styles, not wear the same thing all the time. The atmosphere is light. There is no pressure. A normal morning, but enough to create stability. They move on to watering plants. Tu Diem scoops water from the tank. Toan pours it into basins and rows. The rhythm repeats steadily. They do not need much communication. Their movements match naturally. Toan reminds her to wear shoes to avoid slipping, to wear a hat to avoid the sun. He reminds her to prepare keys and phone before leaving. Simple but practical reminders. Then he talks about future plans. Empty land will be used. More vegetables and flowers will be planted. Not only for food, but also to make the space easier to live in and better to look at. Tu Diem listens and nods. She does not say much, but in her mind she imagines it clearly. A space with organized vegetables and flowers. That gives her a sense of security about the future. Toan pushes the motorbike to the gate. The wheels roll slowly on the ground. Tu Diem walks ahead, holding the keys and helmet, and hands them to him. They look at each other. No words, just a small smile, an agreement without speaking. The engine starts, not loud but enough to break the quiet morning. They leave the land behind. The vegetable rows remain, waiting. The road to the market is not far. The country market is already busy. Sellers set up goods. Buyers move around. Voices overlap. The smell of live chickens, fruit and vegetables mixes in the air. It is not perfectly clean, but it is familiar. Toan and Tu Diem walk past the chicken area. They stop. Toan looks carefully at each bird. He asks about price, care, delivery. Min answers clearly. They exchange phone numbers. They agree that when needed, chickens can be delivered to the farm, including roosters for breeding. Tu Diem stands beside him. She does not interrupt. She observes. She sees him writing down information carefully. Small tasks, but he takes them seriously. They continue walking. They reach a stall selling Hmong clothing. Colorful dresses, hand-embroidered with detail. Toan stops and looks at each one. He tells Tu Diem she should buy one for outings. She shakes her head. She says she already has enough and does not want unnecessary spending. Toan does not argue. He just says he wants her to look neat and good every day. Not for others, but for her own comfort. Even in the crowded market, they are not distracted. They focus on each other and their life. Toan's phone rings. He answers. Thu asks about the chickens. He replies briefly that he already has the contact and will call when needed. The call ends quickly. Tu Diem stands next to him and hears everything. She realizes he does not overlook small things. That builds her trust. They walk past stalls selling seeds, knives, and scissors. Toan looks but does not buy. There is no urgent need. They move slowly, observing more than purchasing. The market atmosphere changes their pace. Daily work no longer feels heavy. Toan looks at Tu Diem. He sees her smile, her comfort. He understands moments like this are necessary. The phone rings again. This time it is work. Toan listens longer. His expression becomes serious. After the call, he turns to Tu Diem and clearly says he must leave immediately to meet Tan. There is no alternative. The surrounding noise continues, but between them it feels separated. Toan takes money from his wallet and gives it to her. He tells her to buy what she needs and walk home later since it is not far. Tu Diem nods. She wishes him success in a short sentence. There is a bit of concern in her eyes, but she does not stop him. Toan looks at her one last time, reminds her to be careful, then leaves quickly. Tu Diem stands alone, money in her hand. A brief emptiness appears, but she does not hold on to it. She understands his work matters. She adjusts her thoughts and continues. Tu Diem remains standing among the moving crowd for a few more seconds, not because of hesitation, but to steady her thoughts after Toan leaves. Around her, everything continues as usual. Vendors keep calling, buyers keep negotiating, footsteps move without pause. No one notices that she is now alone. She looks down at the money in her hand, folds it carefully, and places it into her pocket. The movement is firm, without delay. She then turns back toward the stalls she passed earlier with Toan. This time, she walks slower, her attention sharper, no longer moving by feeling, but by clear need. She stops at a simple clothing stall. Shirts are hung in rows, each with a small handwritten price tag. The seller speaks quickly, promoting each item, but she does not react immediately. She touches the fabric, checking thickness and softness. She selects a simple shirt in a neutral color, suitable for outdoor work. The original price is 220,000, and the seller offers 200,000 when she does not bargain. She does not negotiate further. She tries it on, adjusts the shoulders, turns slightly to check the fit at the back and sleeves. After a few seconds, she nods and decides to buy. She moves to the next stall selling underwear. There are no complicated choices. She selects two basic sets, one nude and one black. She checks the stitching and stretches the elastic slightly to test durability. She does not focus on appearance, only comfort and function. Each item is chosen quickly, but with clear reasoning. After paying, she does not stay and steps aside to organize her bag neatly. These small purchases do not create major change, but they give her a sense of control over her life. She recalls what Toan said in the morning, that he wants her to stay neat and presentable. It does not feel like pressure. It feels like a clear direction for their long-term life. The market begins to thin out. Some stalls start packing. The sunlight becomes stronger, hitting the ground directly and raising the temperature. Open spaces appear between the stalls. Tu Diem does not stay longer. She turns and walks toward the main exit. The road home remains the same, a dirt path with wild grass on both sides and small fields nearby. There are not many people at this hour. Occasionally, a motorbike passes and disappears. She walks steadily, carrying her bag, maintaining a consistent pace. No one walks beside her, but she does not feel the absence. As she walks, she thinks about Toan. The call earlier came suddenly, but she understands it could not be delayed. She does not need to know the details, but she understands such decisions directly affect their future. She does not feel left behind. She adjusts her thinking and accepts that each person has a role. When she reaches the gate, she opens it immediately and walks inside. She places her bag on a wooden table near the porch. Without resting, she takes a hoe and walks straight to the empty land behind. The soil is hard and filled with stones. She begins digging. Each strike requires clear effort. There is no help, no machines, only simple tools and physical strength. Sweat begins to run down her face and soak into her shirt, but she does not stop. She bends down, removes large stones, and places them into small piles. Then she levels the ground, forming straight rows. The process repeats, not fast but steady. Each action has a clear purpose. At the roadside, there is a pile of decayed straw and husks. She walks over, gathers them by hand, and brings them back. No tools, just manual effort. She mixes the straw into the soil, turning it evenly. The goal is to loosen the soil and improve moisture retention for planting. After some time, the soil begins to change clearly. It is no longer as hard. The color becomes darker, the texture softer. The work shows visible results. A breeze passes, carrying the scent of soil and dry straw. She pauses briefly, wipes sweat from her forehead, and looks at the land she has worked on. The area is not large, but it has a clear structure now. In her mind, she visualizes more clearly. Rows of vegetables like Malabar spinach and amaranth growing evenly. Lines of flowers placed along paths to add color. The space becoming more organized and easier to manage. She thinks about Toan returning and seeing this. No explanation needed, but enough for him to understand. Working alone no longer feels heavy. She defines this as her responsibility. He handles external work. She manages internal tasks. There is no comparison, no dependence. She continues working at a steady pace. Time passes without her noticing. When the sunlight softens, she finally stops. She sits at the edge of the row and breathes steadily. Her body is tired, but her mind is light. She does not count how much she has done. She only sees the change in front of her. She rests, drinks water, and looks toward the gate. Toan is not there yet, but she is not impatient. She knows he will return after finishing his work. In another setting, Toan is sitting at Min Huang Cafe. The space is quiet and not crowded. He arrives early, chooses a seat, orders a drink, and waits. His posture is straight, his focus steady. After a while, Toan arrives. They shake hands briefly. No small talk. The discussion begins immediately. Toan clearly explains that he moved from construction to timber business more than a year ago. The reason is more stable export demand. However, to expand, he needs capital and someone with management experience. Toan listens without interruption. When Toan finishes, he shares his background. He talks about managing construction projects, controlling costs, and operating teams. At the same time, he clearly states that he lacks direct experience in the timber field. The exchange is direct. No unnecessary words. Each person focuses on key information. Then Toan takes Toan to two nearby workshops. The sound of saw machines is constant. The smell of freshly cut wood is strong. The environment is practical, without decoration. Toan explains the process. Wood is cut, trimmed, peeled, then dried under sunlight for about 3 days. After that, it is packaged for export. Each step follows a specific timeline. Toan observes closely. He asks about raw material reserves, which last about 15 to 20 days. He asks about workforce size, work organization, and import-export processes. Toan answers clearly and fully. He shows strong intention for long-term cooperation. Finally, they reach an agreement. Toan will take 30% initial shares. Capital transfer will happen later. Legal procedures will follow. The decision is made based on sufficient information. Toan understands the responsibility involved. As he leaves the workshop, his steps become firmer. He does not speak, but his direction is clear. This is an opportunity to stabilize finances and expand work. He thinks about Tu Diem. If this succeeds, She will no longer need heavy fieldwork. She can move to lighter tasks. The afternoon sun shines on stacks of drying wood. The image shows a process in motion, a plan slowly taking shape. The afternoon light slowly settles over the land, no longer harsh but softened into a warm yellow tone that spreads evenly across the soil that has just been worked. The shadows of the rows stretch longer, forming clear and straight lines on the ground. The space becomes quieter compared to midday. Tu Diem stands in the middle of the land, still holding the hoe, her eyes moving across the rows she has just completed. She does not rest immediately. Instead, she walks along each row, checking alignment, pressing down uneven spots with her foot, adjusting raised sections with the hoe. Every movement is slow but controlled, not done carelessly. The sound of a motorbike stopping outside the gate breaks the stillness. It is a familiar sound. There is no need to look to know that Toan has returned. The gate opens and he steps in, his eyes immediately scanning the land before settling on her. He does not stop at the porch. He walks directly toward the field. When he sees the rows clearly shaped and the soil already loosened, his expression changes. He does not need a long explanation to understand that she has been working continuously while he was away. He asks briefly why she worked alone instead of waiting. His tone is not accusatory. It is direct, calm, and focused. Tu Diem answers simply that she saw the work could be done, so she started. No extra explanation. Toan listens, nods once, and does not question further. He takes off his outer shirt, folds it neatly to the side, rolls up his sleeves, and picks up the hoe. He begins working beside her immediately, without pause. He walks along the rows, correcting uneven sections, redistributing areas where the straw has not been mixed properly, making the soil more consistent. Tu Diem continues her part, picking out remaining stones and placing them into small piles. The pace becomes faster than when she was working alone, but it remains controlled. There is no confusion. Each of them understands what to do without needing instructions. While working, Toan starts outlining a clear plan for the land. He says they should begin with easy vegetables, like Malabar spinach and amaranth, so they can harvest sooner. The rows closer to the path should be used for leafy greens that are easy to access for daily use. The outer edges of the land can be used for planting flowers, not for selling, but to improve the environment, to make the space more comfortable and structured. He speaks in specific points, not in general ideas. Tu Diem listens and adjusts her work accordingly. There is no need to ask questions. Their coordination is natural, with no overlap or conflict in their tasks. The work continues smoothly without interruption. Toan looks over the rows again and comments that her layout is well done. The lines are straight, the spacing is consistent, and it will be easy to plant and maintain. He says he will continue refining this area in the coming days to make sure everything is stable before planting begins. He adds that preparing land is similar to building something long-term, where doing it properly at the beginning prevents problems later. Tu Diem pauses for a moment when she hears that, then continues working. She does not respond verbally, but her expression shows she understands. There is no need for further explanation. After a while, when the main work for the day is under control, she asks about his meeting. The question is short and direct. Toan answers clearly. He explains that he visited the workshops, observed the process, and spoke directly with Tan. They reached an agreement. He explains that he will take an initial 30% share. The capital transfer will be handled after completing necessary checks. The paperwork will follow in the next steps. He does not go into unnecessary detail. He focuses only on the main points. He adds that if this plan works as expected, their income will become more stable. When that happens, she will not need to continue doing heavy field work like this. She can move to lighter work that requires less physical effort. Tu Diem listens and nods. She does not ask about risks or financial specifics. She simply says she will support whatever decision he makes, as long as he feels it is right and manageable. Her response is short but clear. The atmosphere between them does not shift dramatically, but it becomes more defined. Each understands their position. There is no need for long discussion. The direction is shared. Toan continues working for a few more minutes, then glances around the land. He says that once everything is finished, this place will look very different. He says he will make sure it develops properly, not just for planting, but for long-term use. He adds in a simple tone that he wants everything here, including the land and their life, to move in a steady and reliable direction. Tu Diem hears him, but does not respond immediately. She gives a small smile and continues working. Her movements are more relaxed now compared to earlier when she was working alone. The light continues to fade gradually. The two of them finish the remaining tasks for the day. They place the tools aside, brush the dirt off their hands, and walk back toward the porch. They sit down on the same wooden bench as in the morning. Tu Diem pours water and hands it to Toan. He takes it and drinks a long sip before setting the cup down. They sit quietly. There is no long conversation. There is no need to review the day. Each of them already understands what has happened. In front of them, the land shows clear progress. The rows are straight, the soil is loose and ready. The work is not complete, but the foundation is in place. Toan looks ahead without speaking. In his mind, the next steps are already forming. What needs to be done, how it should be done, and in what order. There is no uncertainty. Tu Diem sits beside him, her hands resting on her knees. She looks in the same direction. She does not need to know every detail, but she knows she will continue her part. The space is quiet. There are no loud sounds, only the fading light and cooler air. As evening approaches, they remain seated for a while longer. Neither of them rushes to stand up. There is nothing urgent left to do. The moment is short, but it is enough to close the day. The physical fatigue remains, but it no longer feels heavy. In its place is a clearer sense of direction. A piece of land is being prepared. A new line of work has begun. Both are moving forward at the same time. When the light is almost gone, Toan stands up first and takes one last look at the land. Tu Diem stands up after him. They walk inside together. Outdoor work ends for the day. Behind them, the rows of soil remain still, waiting to be planted. A process has already started. It is not finished yet, but it is moving forward with a clear direction.
Toan và Tu Diem bắt đầu một ngày bình dị với những công việc quen thuộc, từ giặt giũ đến chăm sóc khu đất nhỏ của mình. Trong lúc đang cùng nhau tận hưởng khoảng thời gian yên bình và dự định đi chợ thư giãn, Toan bất ngờ nhận cuộc gọi công việc quan trọng và phải rời đi ngay, để lại Tu Diem một mình giữa chợ. Cô tự mua sắm những vật dụng cần thiết rồi lặng lẽ trở về, bắt đầu cải tạo đất, chuẩn bị cho việc trồng rau và hoa. Trong khi đó, Toan gặp gỡ đối tác và nắm lấy cơ hội hợp tác mới. Khi trở về, cả hai cùng tiếp tục làm việc, chia sẻ kế hoạch tương lai, thể hiện sự tin tưởng và đồng hành trong cuộc sống.